Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the CRKT Overland. Very interesting knife, and from TJ Schwarz, who is a great designer who's done some pretty well-known stuff in the past. But anyways, before we go any further into this guy, I want to give some full disclosure. This guy was sent to me directly by CRKT. I told him, as always, I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be junk. They still send it along. Nonetheless, we have to assume this is the very best quality controlled one of these guys ever. And I'm doing my best not to let that affect my review. But there you go. Next thing, let's do some size comparison real quick. This is not actually a very large knife. I mean, by my standards, it's reasonably sized. But nonetheless, here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2. The Spyderco Delica, and so we can see here that, yeah, it's a medium-sized knife, shall we say. And then here it is against the Spyderco PM2. So, yeah, it's sort of in that mid-range there. So there you go. Next thing, like I said already, this is from TJ Schwarz, a great designer. He's the person who did the Militorant, the Koenig Arius. He did the CRKT Thero. He's done a couple of other things that's been pretty interesting. He's, frankly, one of the designers that's sort of in my mind as somebody to watch. I think he does, most of the things he touches turn out pretty excellent. So I'm a big fan of that. So let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. This very interesting knife here. So on the good side, to start with, this guy has a nice little color scheme. Now, I know a lot of folks aren't going to love it, and frankly, even I'm a little bit torn on the orange there, but I can see this really resonating for a bunch of people. Going with the green, going with the orange, it's just, I think it's going to blend in well enough for a bunch of people, but it's also got those little pops of orange there, which will help you pick it up on a forest floor. Am I a huge fan? I don't know, but I can see a lot of folks loving it. So I'll definitely give them that. It's a little bit off the beaten path, so that's good. Next thing, ergonomically speaking, it's pretty good. It fits nicely in the hand, and the overall approach, specifically having the blade a little bit lower than the hand, means that especially if you're using this cutting against a surface, you're going to be a whole lot easier. It's going to be a whole lot easier for you because your knuckles aren't going to be hitting the table quite as readily. So this kind of a design where the blade itself is below the area where the hand sits can be very nice for some kinds of cutting and provide some good ergonomics. Next thing. Clip is good. The clip is good actually in a couple of different ways, but the biggest way in which the clip is good is that it's a deep carry clip, but they've done it right. They've recessed the clip into the metal, and they're using flat screws there. That is exactly the kind of detail I want to see on this. That's well done, and I appreciate it very much. It also hangs well with good tension, etc. It's a solid clip, no complaints there. Next thing, this guy comes to a very thin edge. It's actually a lot better than a lot of what you see coming out of CRKT, and I appreciate that very much. I hope very much that this is a sign of thinner grinds to come from that company, just because it's going to cut a lot better, and it does, in fact, cut very nicely. You can see, even at the very tip here, it's pretty damn thin. So I appreciate that very much. And it just makes this knife a little bit more of a joy to use and cut with in life. Next thing, blade on this guy, like I said, it's already, it's thinly ground, which I appreciate, and the shape of the blade is good. It's it's all belly, so if you need a flat surface, well, it's not going to go so well for you, but at the same time, it's a shape that I've used over and over again, and each time I do appreciate, like the Spyderco Spidey Chef, etc., is a clear, but, you know, a lot of the very good everyday carry knives out there, even the Spyderco PM2, the blade shape, the contour isn't all that different there. So, although it looks like a little bit of a sheep's foot from the start, and I guess it would be probably a sheep's foot if it's anything, a reverse tanto? I don't freaking know. Either way, whatever it is, it's a fine blade shape. Then finally, the knife itself is actually pretty thin. I mean, we're talking about the thin grind, which I appreciate, but the knife itself is actually not much thicker than the Spyderco Delica here. It's a reasonably thin knife overall, and that makes it carry exceptionally well. Although it is right side, right pocket only carry, it carries quite nicely, and with this deep pocket clip, it works well, and it's easy to grab out of the pocket. I like it. I think it hangs in the pocket well, and because of that thinness, it's great. So to me, all of that is the good. Is that it is a thin knife in the pocket. It has a nice blade with a thin grind. It has a good clip. It has good ergonomics and a nice color scheme. To me, what's great about this knife, though, unquestionably, is the design. This is an attractive knife. Of course, not everybody's going to agree with that. That's, if you don't, you're welcome to consider one of the other things the great, right? But to me, at least, I find this very attractive. And they draw explicitly the idea of a rock-crawling off-road vehicle to this. And I think we can see that there's a little bit of that, up in this. But I can see that that's the inspiration here. And I think for a lot of people, even though I'm not generally a fan of black washes and that kind of thing, I feel like this was done very well. It's a black wash that's nice enough that you still get a little reflectivity. You still get a little bit of joy out of the materials. It's not like a flat-out black-coated blade or anything like that. I mean, I guess it is, but it's not as... I think this is actually a very impressive... I'm sorry, a very attractive, although impressive too, little design. And I think this is going to resonate for a bunch of different people. It's got an aesthetic to it, but it's a good aesthetic, and it works out well, and I think it fits with TJ's overall sort of theme. A lot of the stuff that he does tends to be a little bit military, a little bit, and I think this goes in that domain. So I think this is a great design, and I think it's going to age pretty well for a lot of folks. On the bad side, unfortunately, to start with the price on this guy, I wouldn't call it bad, but it's also not as, the value isn't as strong. It's $55. Now, this is a fine price, certainly, but the thing is, there were a lot of really nice pieces going out there, especially from the Chinese brands, coming in at $55 with higher levels, and particularly they lack some of the little compromises. And this part here, this is knife snobby. I'm going to fully admit this, but the thing is, more and more, it's getting to be harder to deal with, like, Teflon washes on here, because the action on this knife is okay. You can pop it open pretty reliably, but the thing is, it's a little bit of a slow action, and it's stick, slip, just like you get at it. I would prefer this vastly using phosphor bronze washes. The action would be better, it'd be more durable. It's just I think it's a better approach. This is bias, I'll freely admit. I don't like having plastic as an important moving part in my knives, but at the same time, that's definitely there, and it's definitely a compromise. The other major compromise here is the steel. They don't put it on the blade for a good reason. It's 8CR13 MOV. This is a steel that for a long time was considered okay. I think it's getting less and less so every day now, and it's not run particularly hard either. This means it is exceptionally easy to sharpen. I can get this guy back up to a nice edge with a couple of passes on, like, the Spyderco Gauntlet or any of your basic sharpening systems. You can clean this up pretty easily, but it's good that it's easy to sharpen because you're going to be doing it a lot. And in fact, I was carrying this knife pretty substantially during my moving process because it happened to be the one that was sort of on my table. And so it got a lot more love than usual with things like cardboard and whatnot, and I just found myself, like, dulling this guy so quickly, breaking down boxes and such. Not a big fan of that. And so, to me, all of that is the bad, is that they're using 8CR13 MOV, which is a steel that is... Yeah, they're using Teflon washes on this guy, which I'm not a fan of. And for the price, it's getting harder and harder to compete with this kind of materials at $55 with some of the Chinese brands. The ugly front, there's nothing particularly ugly, so we'll go to the final conclusion. And that conclusion is actually that this is a very solid knife. I mean, look, it's got an excellent blade. It's got good ergonomics. It's very carryable. And it's got a design that I do really think is nice. I like TJ's work a lot. Maybe that's a form of bias, like aesthetic bias, but I think this is a great design. I mean, I think it's in line with some of CRKT's other stuff. In a lot of ways, this feels like a relatively natural pairing with the, this is a different designer, of course, the Ken Onion Homefront, but boy, does this feel like a series to me. They've got a lot of sort of shared aesthetic in there, so I appreciate that. But nonetheless, this is it's got a nice design and all that. The problem, and frankly, the only problems with it, are what feel like cost-cutting measures to me as a gear snob. You know, the Teflon leaves the action feeling, it works, it's fine, you can deploy it reliably. Maybe I'm being too hard on it, but it just doesn't feel good. And then the steel is okay, but it's a little bit behind the curve. And honestly, the biggest problem that this knife here has is the competition. Increasingly, you get Chinese budget focus brands like Civivi, Real Steel, etc., that are delivering better steels, better actions at price points that are matching or beating this. This is the Civivi Shredder. It's a $60 knife, so it's $5 more, but it's using D2 steel. It's running on bearings, although I don't think bearings are the best choice here. Still, the action on this is really excellent. It doesn't, whereas it feels like this is sort of like the accountants got to this one. I mean, and to be fair, what CRKT usually brings to the table is design. A lot of the designs on the Chinese brand knives often range from boring to, wow, I've already forgotten this design and I'm still staring at it. But you still reach this decision point at a certain point. Like, do I want a little bit more design with lower material quality, or do I want to put build-in materials first? And say, I really do wish that CRKT could find a way to compete on every front, to deliver real washes, upgraded steels, that kind of thing. So there's not that feeling of compromise. But that said, I'm 100% being a snob here. For many people, Teflon washes don't even bother them. Some people are actually okay. Some people even like them. Go figure, right? But more importantly, for a lot of folks, they're used to 8CR13, and so sharpening all the damn time doesn't bother them. In all of my using it, though, honestly, it is a solid tool, because, like I said, in all of this using, the worst thing I really have to say is that I had to sharpen it up a lot more often than usual. So a lot of what you're hearing, you can probably chalk up to snobbery. And in the end, my conclusion is that this is a very solid tool. It's a very functional piece. It does a lot of good work, and I think for a lot of folks, it will put in a lot of good work. If this is a knife that's in your price range and you're loving the aesthetic, then by God, this is going to be great. The design on it is very, very impressive, both from a functional perspective as well as from an aesthetic one. And honestly, the aesthetic is the win here. So if you're liking that aesthetic, I can very, very easily see this knife overlanding a place in your collection. Okay. Anyways, there you go. Hope you can get it pretty cheap. Okay. Anyways, I hope this has been interesting to you. I'm going to go see if I can wrangle a new review. Bye now.